Well, speaking of going backwards and things being taken away with our eyes wide open, some of us really felt strongly about being in Selma this past weekend. It's the 60th commemoration of Bloody Sunday, and I can tell you all on the 50th being there and feeling so proud of progress, and going back 10 years later and feeling concerned that I need to now stand on this hollow ground to get the energy, the inspiration, the strength to endure in this moment is really sobering. It was so powerful to be with so many people. Our sister and friend Joy Reid was awarded at the dinner that they hold on the eve of Bloody Sunday. We had panel discussions, really robust meetings, strategy sessions, but it just still feels so disappointing that in the blink of an eye, in the matter of a couple of months, so much has been rolled back because people ignored the signs and they ignored the ways in which our rights were snatched from us over the last several years, including what the Supreme Court did in Shelby County versus Holder in 2013, right on the other side of President Obama winning 2 terms as the nation's first Black president. And so the question I really have for y'all is, how far have we really come? And why is progress so doggone fragile?
Yeah.
Why can it be snatched? It just feels like it can be yanked from us.
Well, just so our viewers know, Shelby v. Holder is when they gutted Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, which essentially said that you have to have permission from the federal government before making any changes to your local voting laws. And that existed because there was so much persistent voter suppression happening all across the country. And you saw once that happened, there have been an increase in laws that suppress the vote. I think last I checked, which has been years, probably over a year, there may have been maybe over 70 local ballot initiatives to roll back voting rights, but
300
me on that.
300 pieces of legislation in states throughout the country
That
over
they
the last
passed?
year.
That they passed or introduced?
No, 300 introduced.
Right,
in
yeah.
state legislatures. You were saying local, so I was just saying, and on the state side.
Thank you for correcting me. State, and I don't know how many passed, but it might be close to that number, over 300.
No, that's introduced.
Yeah.
But worse over, y'all, they've also used the gutting of Section 5 to gerrymander and to steal.
Yes.
Seats, congressional seats that had diverse representation in Florida. They took 2 of the 4 Black access seats, which means a district design where an African-American candidate could run and have the potential to win if folks voted along racial lines necessarily, which is not necessarily how it goes. Nonetheless, this governor in my state stole 2 of them. And guess who's there now? White candidates, Republican, male candidates that have taken these seats. And it's happened all across the country thanks to what they handed down to us in Shelby.
And greatly dilutes our political power.
Absolutely.
One thing I want to point out, I want to hear more just about how it felt being there, Angela. But before I ask that, I want to point out what happened on that bridge. I think so often the history is sanitized because the narrators don't often look like us and they control the narrative. But it wasn't like, Congressman John Lewis he wasn't a congressman then, but he was walking past and somebody pushed him down and that was it. I mean, he had his skull fractured. It was not just men, not that it reduces it that it was just our men. Even our men being violently assaulted is horrific, but they also violently assaulted women, children, pregnant women across that bridge. It was a violent, bloody melee of non-violent protesters. Why this was so significant is because this was the first time. Now imagine this is before social media. So a lot of people don't even know what's happening along the Bible Belt in the country, but really all over the country when it came to voting rights. And the violence was so So
Graphic.
Yes, it was so horrific that ABC at the time, the network, actually interrupted its telecast. They were showing Judgment at Nuremberg at the time, and they interrupted it to show what was happening in Selma, Alabama. Once the rest of the country saw what was happening, then there were people, including allies, including folks who didn't look like us, who said, well, wait a sec, we can't tolerate that. We can't stand for that. And that's when change started to happen. Now that we have these devices and, we're looking at monkeys on a unicycle and, for me, looking at, puppies getting their vaccination shots, we're not necessarily paying attention to those things. So I don't know how to corral the attention of folks. But that was a turning point in history. That revolution was televised, and that's what led to change. So I don't know that we have come that far. And I'll tell you, Angela and Andrew, I feel really defeated. I feel bad because last week on the podcast, I was saying, well, I don't know if I'm hopeful yet. And people are like, what do you expect, Tiffany? But so I don't want to spread my my blanketed bereavement around my despair around what's happening. Yeah. I think, if you don't feel hopeful, please tune into this podcast because Andrew, I feel like you're fighting, you're hopeful. Angela, you are 18 hours every day around the clock doing something to help organize a movement. I'm doing other things, which I'll talk about later, but it is depressing to see because it feels like in this time of being a flat circle, it is a cyclical problem. And I don't know why progress is so fragile, but I just know that not only is progress fragile, this very young democracy is, and it takes participation and awareness to preserve it. And I don't know how we get to that point because we're asking people to care about everything and they end up caring about nothing.
That's why I like, Tiffany, your layup to Angela around the feeling, because I am also likewise curious at a moment like this where you were able to assemble with a lot of folks in our community who frankly sit at the position where people expect them to do something all the time to protect us. Tell me, what does being in Selma 60 years on that hollow ground mean for an organizing leader like yourself and folks that you were with to just gird them up in this moment? Because there is a lot of despair. I don't think any of us should refuse that exists. The question is once we confront the despair, then what do we do with it? And I'm just wondering, what kind of fuel, if any, do the leaders get, right? So that they can keep leading.
And how did it feel to your spirit to be there?
Yeah, and I meant to address this earlier, so sorry if I didn't. But yes, it felt good to be there. It felt necessary. It provided us, again, a sobering opportunity to reflect on how far we've come and how quickly progress can be rolled back. I think beyond the politics of who's going to be in the picture in the front, even seeing the Reverend Jackson's commitment to be there, with Parkinson's in a wheelchair,
pushed
and
by his son,
among others. Reverend Sharpton, Congresswoman Waters, Hakeem Jeffries, Derek Johnson, and Latasha Brown, who was rallying folks, singing in a bullhorn because something happened with the sound system. It was reminding us of, when there's not a way, we make one. So I think it's necessary. I hope that Black folks in this time will continue to convene, to gather. Strategy ain't going to happen out of nowhere. Yeah. Hope isn't going to be given to you with no action. The moment requires us to sacrificially come together to find a better way. It just does. And I think that we'll continue to be in despair. We'll continue to be fearful. We'll continue to be scrambling about what to do so long as we don't prioritize what our next steps must be. There is the fierce urgency of now. And I wish that it wasn't, but that is where we are. And I think we'll be able to better fight it once we accept what is.
So can I ask, do you feel despair? Because you're doing these things, you're in the fight. Do you ever feel despair? Do you feel like, because when you ask that question, you sound exhausted. You sound like, why is our progress so fragile? And I feel that. I really do feel that. And I think so. You, Latasha Brown, all the other people who are in this fight, are you saying I don't feel that despair because I'm actively fighting something every day? Or, yeah, I feel that despair too, but I know if I keep moving, then that's the only way to progress.
Well, let me turn the question to you, Tiff. feeling despair, in the feeling of despair that you have,
Yeah.
how do you think you get out of that? Like, what is the way out of despair?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out. And I'm not apathetic. Like, I'm not sitting around doing nothing. But sometimes I do look at the things that are happening and I wonder, how does that stop what's happening right now? I feel like I'm in the middle of the storm watching all this happen, and I'm like, I don't even know how to stop it. But there's something that's why I think there is something to being hopeful, like, what did it mean to be in Selma? Like, how is going to Selma stopping something? How is standing on the floor of Congress singing "We Shall Overcome" stopping something? I don't want to dismiss those things, because Black folks and our hope, like, we need that hope to go on. I just don't know what the tangible thing is that we're stopping.
I think that my question is, and maybe I'm probably asking it poorly, but I would love to know, even from our audience, if you are feeling despair, but you're not apathetic, what are you doing? What are you actively doing to not feel the despair? Like, if you're feeling sad, about something else? Let's say it's not even about the government, but if you're feeling sadness, how do you combat that sadness? If you're feeling hopeless, how do you combat that hopelessness? If you're feeling despair, how do you combat that despair? Or do you just say, I'm going to sit in it until it passes?
No.
I mean, that is a way. And then if you're saying, well, I'm not apathetic, so then there's some action that you're taking to not sit in apathy. What is that action?
Well, I'll say what I can. I don't want to say a lot about it, but one thing for me that I'm caught up in the middle in is writing, bearing witness to this and writing. And I'll say more about that later. But I don't have the ability to disconnect from it. Like, I'm mired in it. It can weigh me down. And when I'm not in it, I feel lighter. I feel better. But trying to keep up with everything. And I write every day from 10 a.m. till about 7 p.m. There are other things that I am finding my way to participate in, which I don't, I want to protect and preserve some of the work that's happening. But, there are some of us who are involved in conversations happening. And I'm looking for that thing within those groups of, well, what is the thing that I can attach to where I'm doing something to stop this? And I haven't quite found that thing.
Is it possible that the work, the cathartic, and even weighing work of being the teller of the time is a contribution?
Yes, I mean, what we do here, but I mean, to Angela's point, though, I think we have to do more. Whatever we're doing, we have to do more of it.
Sure.
I just don't know that what I'm not good at is swinging at the wind. What I'm not good at is, like, I'm gonna just do a bunch of actions and, scramble myself in a tizzy. Like, no, I do want to be still and purposeful. If I'm going to lend my time and resources and my very limited time and time deficit of actual, work that pays me, then what is it? And sometimes I do feel like in the chaos of it all, I wonder, well, what did this actually stop? What did it move? But I hate saying that, because I feel like if that's what you're doing, and, maybe something's going to stop. Well, somebody was like, well, what's it going to mean if we cross the bridge? All we doing is walk across the bridge, and that was a big moment to change things. So I don't want my despair to be infectious. I don't know. Whatever I'm doing is not enough. Bearing witness to things isn't enough. But that's just what I've, done.
And by the way, I'm
not an organizer. I know that much.
But
that doesn't mean that I can't be supportive to the organizers. You
are an organizer, because I've been on the receiving end of your organizing work.
Angela is an organizer. I mean, I would say Angela is an organizer.
She is as well. But this is what I think. I think we often make the bar for entry too damn high.
Yep.
You don't have to be an Angela Rye. I love her.
Nope.
And I'm thankful to God for her, for our people. No. Yes, we need new ones. You need acolytes and people who will replace you. But I just think we spend a lot of energy in our community knowing that we carry the weight of so much. Shit, waking up every day. How does James Baldwin put it? Waking up as a Black man in America, every day.
To be conscious, to be enraged.
Right? It's to be enraged. So that's already a feat. But we don't have to make the bar you too have to organize a 24-hour, meeting-a-thon
people,
for the
yeah.
urgency of the moment. And by the way, do it in 48 hours from this point. The production needs to take place. You don't necessarily have to be the person who's out there getting the most new voter registration cards signed. Maybe you're the one who's actually building the teams, training people so that they don't run afoul of the law while they're in the process of collecting voter registration cards. I only say this, y'all. I used an example. And by the way, I want to invite people onto listening to my solo pods as they release, because we're trying to demystify this question, the big question of what do I do and how do I start? If we make the start so big, there are a lot of people who will check out before they ever take a step forward.
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.